Today on Brian's Budget Garage, we're going to replace the intake manifold on a Crown Vic. Alright, I've already started this, but I'm going to go ahead and go through what I've taken off so far. You have to take off a lot of the top of the engine to get to it. We also have some people mowing and stuff over here, and hopefully you can hear me. Okay, the first thing I took off was this air hose, the hose from the breather to the throttle body. Then I took off where it was actually cracked, the thermostat housing. Take the thermostat out, and if you look right here, I've actually goofed it up to try to get it through a couple days. This is what cracks. This right here is the plastic part that cracks right through here. The new one has aluminum. I'll show you that in a minute. But this is where this one cracked. A lot of times they'll crack along here where there's a lot of stress on the thermostat. Okay? Actually, let me show you that right now. I'll show you the new one. So here's the new one. The new one has an aluminum water jacket instead of plastic, so it can't crack through here. It still has a plastic intake, but the actual water jacket is aluminum. Okay, the next thing I take out is the alternator. The alternator, you have to pull this pulley back, loosen the serpentine belt, take this piece off. That's 4 bolts right here. And then you loosen these 2 bolts. You don't take them off, you loosen them. And then and you have to take off all the wires, by the way. The wire to here, which is over here in this bundle, and the power wire, which is over there now. And then once you loosen that, the whole thing just lifts off. I'll put it away here for a minute. Ow! That's heavy. Okay, the next thing you do is you need to release these fuel lines. The next thing you need to do is release these fuel lines. This one goes to here, and this one goes to here. How you release them is these plastic things. You take these plastic things, the right size one for that hose, like that. You slide it onto here, and it slides into this connector right here. That spring inside here is what keeps this on. So those plastic things make that spring expand so it can come over this lip. So you slide it in and pull it off. But these little plastic releasing tools you can buy at any part store. But although they look like plastic and not worth much, they actually are very important. Luckily they're cheap. The next thing you want to remove is brackets and hoses and like that. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, remove the power. Because before you start removing the alternator, remove the battery. So to remove, the way I found it to be easy I need to remove this. I need to remove this. I need to remove all this stuff off the top of this intake manifold. So I'm going to remove this, but this is the EGR valve. This one's such a pain because it's right in the way and it doesn't easily pop loose. Several times I've tried to pop these loose and it just breaks the pipe or breaks something else. So I'm going to try to do it without removing this pipe. So instead I'm removing this valve from the throttle valve body. So I've taken out all of the screws for the throttle valve body, and now that the screws are out, you have to make sure all of these hoses are loose. And make sure you loosen that bracket. So now it just wiggles around and the whole thing sits off to the side. Be careful with these type of vacuum hoses, they break real easy. The other issue I've had is these old hoses to here and here I have disintegrated, so I'm going to have to get new rubber hoses. I also had a problem with this EGR valve pipe. It busted right here, so I'm going to have to get a new pipe, probably just hose. Where's the other one that popped on me? See that one? It just disintegrated at the end, so there's probably going to be some rubber needing to be replaced. But this is a 2000 Crown Victoria, so it's 17, 18 years old. Alright, the next piece that I actually had, there's a metal piece right here. It's a metal bracket. They use it to install the engine. I hate those things. I really hate those things because it's bolted on the back. You'd have to remove this. You'd have to remove so much crap just to get that off. I've done this. This is the third Crown Vic I've done. I hate that thing, and so what I do is I cut it right here and here, and the whole thing, half of it comes off. Now, a lot of people might have a problem with that. I've done it for several Crown Vics, and I've run them for over 50,000 miles. I don't see a problem with that. Otherwise, if you have a problem with that, unbolt it from the back of the engine. It took me 2 hours once, and I still didn't get it off. Okay, the next thing to do was to remove all of these wires to the coils and the injectors. Okay, so we need to get the fuel rail off. Okay, remove it on both sides. So you pull these out. There's a clip in here, or should be. Mine are all busted off. In fact, you can watch out about that. It looks like the insides sometimes come out too. So be careful with your plugs. They're pretty old and they're plastic. These, you squeeze this bottom piece right here and it pulls off of the coils. So once you get these off, you wiggle around and it'll pull out. And usually the injectors stay with the fuel rail. Okay, so then you pull the fuel rail out, and usually it's full of fuel, so what you do is you hang it someplace and it drips dry so that you don't have to. Eventually you're going to want to clean all of these. These are really nasty, so they need to be cleaned. Okay, the next step is to remove all of the coils. Here are your coil packs. Okay, one coil per cylinder. Now, you got to be real careful because they're rubber booted. If they've been in there a while, sometimes they rip apart, even no matter how hard you try. So I'm going to try to take these out without ripping them apart. We will see how far that goes. Trying to figure out where I can put the camera. Put the camera where you can see it. Okay, good. So I'm going to try. What you do is you twist them a little bit because they have a boot that goes down in a hole. And you wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. They sort of get stuck on the coil down there. And I'm hoping they don't tear apart. Because these ones haven't been in there forever. I replaced them. I'm going to have to get some pliers or something. Now you can take the coil packs out without the rubber. So the coil pack has a spring on there which transmits the power to the plug. So I'm going to have to work on those coil packs. I don't want to replace these rubber boots because they're not expensive, but they're a pain, and I don't really want to replace them. So I'm going to just pull these out and then I'll deal with the boots afterwards. Make sure not to hurt these springs because that is your power to your plugs. So alright, that one came out without the spring. Great. Alright, I'm going to try to get these rubber boots out. I'm going to pause it for a minute. Okay, we have figured out how to get these out. I'll take my screwdriver, I'll shove it in beside it, move it over, it's just a rubber boot, stick a hose from this, squirt a little bit of lubrication juice down there, and put it on both sides. Try to pop it loose from the outside so you're not hurting it, at least hopefully not. So slide your screwdriver on all sides, and take your pliers with that goop in there, and try not to hurt it, but twist it out. Just slowly twist it and pull a little bit. But hopefully there, and then you don't rip the boot. So that saves the boot. Okay, now that I got these out, I'm gonna go ahead and put them back together. Put the spring back in to the rubber thing and pop these back in. Basically just don't want to miss them. So they should, at the end, they should look something like that. So I'll put all the coil packs back together. All of those 4 packs are gone. Now the other side. So again, I'm just going to take out all 4 of the coils, and then I'll work on the rubber boots later. I start removing the boots by putting a squirt in each one of these boots. Oh man. Then I get my screwdriver wherever it went. There it is. And I push in the side of this boot. Just slide it. You can see right here I'm pushing in the side because there's a hole. Basically goes down in a hole. Once you get the screwdriver in there, you can get this tube in there, and you put a squirt in the outside of that boot too. Right there. Not a big squirt, just a little bit of a squirt. And then sort of move it around a little bit and go to the other side. Try to break that loose too. Now be careful, don't stab the boot. If you stab the boot, you've ruined it. Now you take your pliers, which are on the other side of the car. Oh man. Something's getting to me. And you grab the boot with your pliers. Well, without slipping off. Pliers sort of suck. Hold on. There. Realize that sometimes, no matter what you do to these things, they'll rip. So sometimes if they're old enough, you have to replace them anyway. So, but a lot of times if they're ripped, maybe it's time for new coil packs too, because they tend to go out. I tend to, these Excels, I'm not advertising for them, but they're cheaper than the standard Ford ones. So, and they seem to work pretty good. So if you're not familiar with the 4.6 liter engine, Crown Vics, right down these holes is where your plugs are. So if you ever want to replace plugs, I'm not going to do it right now because it wasn't that long ago, but your plugs are down in that little hole, and they realize that when this is leaking here, you can end up getting a lot of fluid in there. So when you take it out, make sure there's not a lot of fluid in these holes all filled up, especially on this side. There is going to be some junk to get rid of and all that, but the next step is to actually remove the actual intake manifold. So we're getting there. Okay. So the main bolts on the intake manifold are number 10s. So normally you wouldn't want to use an impact wrench on a plastic piece, but getting it out doesn't matter. Plus this is cracked anyway, so I'm just going to use this to zip it out. weird. All the ones on this side are stuck. Okay. So when they're stuck, get out the mint. Pop them loose with this bad boy. Those are tight. It means it didn't crack the plastic. Crack all those loose. Okay. Get all these out. There's still a couple on the other side I think that need to be done. I had a real problem getting this last bolt. You have to use a wrench and a cheater bar to pop it loose. Finally got that last bolt out, and then this thing just lifts out. Right from underneath that. So there's your old one. Pretty nasty. Time to go. Now before you can actually put this other one on, the new one comes with its own gasket. So you have to remove these gaskets and clean up the mess. So these need to be thrown away. Now, one thing you want to try not to do, try not to get any dirt inside of the intakes. That'll go through the engine and ruin your engine. Alright, what I do to make sure dirt does not fall into the intake manifold, I take paper towels. I stuff them in the hole so that when I'm cleaning, while I'm cleaning, the dirt should not go in there. And if it does, the paper towel will actually stop. Now we can clean without sending dirt into the engine. What I'm going to use is this. This works as a good scraper. You don't use the sharp side, use the dull side, because the sharp side can make notches in the aluminum. Dull side just scrapes off the garbage. I'm going to scrape it off to the back so that it eventually goes away. Try to scrape away from the holes. So we're going to try to vacuum this up. We don't want this dirt to fall into here. We got a crack in here. Gotta fix the vacuum first real quick. When this thing cracks, it releases all the pressure. So I got my handy dandy tape and we'll fix it. Alright, I've done some cleaning. Looks a lot better now. Very final clean job. I always do with a nice clean rag. Clean up any small pieces, and then we'll take the paper out of the intake. This is the last shot at cleaning it. Now you can take out these papers and try to get all the gunk with them. Throw them away. Don't forget to take the papers out. The car won't run at all. Just pull them straight out so dirt does not come off of them. So the dirt comes with them. wipe off a couple little things that are there. Now you're ready to put the intake manifold back on. Put the new one. So here's the new intake manifold. Take note that all of your gaskets, either integrated gaskets or O-rings or rubber gaskets. Take note that there's no notches, or if any of these are damaged, take it back because it's not going to seal. So make sure all these rubber pieces are good. That's why that has to be flat, so that this will seal well. Especially the water jackets, because those leak. It's bad. Intake's bad, but water's of course worse. Everything looks good. So it's time to actually pop this thing back on. Uh-oh, I'm almost out of battery. It's gonna die soon. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and put this thing on. Try not to get it dirty when you put it in. Very nicely slide it underneath. There you go. Make sure there's nothing under it and it's sitting flat. That looks good. Okay, now what we do is we put the bolts back in that we're holding the intake on. And the last one is this funny little thing here, which I'm going to cut a chunk off of. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to go ahead and cut this straight off. So that's much cleaner now, or not cleaner, but cut better. So now I'm actually going to clean this off so I can put it back on. You need this because one of the bolts goes through here to hold the intake on. Okay, now that it's clean, I can put it back on. Okay, one thing you want to do is clean up these injectors. If you look, these injectors are very, very dirty at the bottom. They, not so much the injector part, but where they were hooked in the manifold. So you want to clean these off before you put them back in. Just using some parts cleaner. I'm not actually using carb cleaner, which you could use, but since it's just dirt that I'm trying to get rid of, not really fuel, I leave them in the fuel rail just for the heck of it. Might as well hose them all off to make sure they get all that dirt off. Anything that doesn't come off with the spray, you just take a rag and wipe it off. But this is where your fuel comes out right here. You want that to be clean. You don't want it to be all gummed up. So we'll do another spray in a bit. But basically, this is a good time to actually clean off your injectors. So this is after I've cleaned them. Make sure that this rubber O-ring is clean, because that's what's going to seal it when you put it in. So especially make sure right at this edge it's clean. So one thing I wanted to show is right here, these little holes is where your fuel comes out. So you want to spray those off, make sure it's clear. These rubber O-rings need to be put in with some kind of grease. So you want to put a little bit of grease around them before you put in. Usually I use Vaseline if I have some. Alright, so it's time to put this back on. What I'm going to do is use Vaseline and put it around all these O-rings so they slide in easily. They don't get damaged. One O-ring can shut down a whole car, so that's something you need to be aware of. So I'm going to take a little bit of this Vaseline and I'm going to put it around every one of the, don't get it in the injector part, but you put it around every one of the O-rings. This will help them slide into the new intake manifold without too much trouble. And if a little bit of Vaseline ends up getting in the intake manifold, even going through the engine, no big deal. It's not like it'll hurt it. So you basically just need some kind of grease. You could use other things. This is what's available to me. So now that these are all gooped up, I'm going to go ahead and put it back on the car. Make sure you have it the right way, where fuel lines are aimed at the correct side. So, now hold on. What you have to do is actually put it underneath of this pipe. And you can pivot it down and put it in place. Make sure they're all lined up before. Alright. Wanted to show you how I clean an injector. Hold on. Where's my frickin'... There it is. Can't clean it without this stuff. Stupid. So, this is how I clean an injector. I take alcohol and an ear swab and then I rub it around in there. So I get the edge of it wet, really wet, and then I rub it around inside of the injector end, and that cleans up the inside. There's deposits that come from gasoline that this actually helps with. If you notice, it's getting darker and darker every time I do that. So I'm actually getting deposits off of these injectors. See? The next thing, put that on there, what I do is I take a needle and I make sure that all the little holes are open. Hopefully you can see this. I don't know if you can see this or not. But I make sure that all the holes are open with a needle. So that's actually how I clean up injectors. It seems to have worked so far. I haven't had any trouble with it. Well, they should be all lined up. You just sort of jiggle them around, push them down, and they should slip right into place. Now the next thing to do is put these things back in. Again, if you have bad coils and bad boots, it's time to replace them. These are not that old and they're in pretty good shape, so I'm just going to use them. let's go ahead and now we can screw on the fuel rail. Okay, the bolts to hold on the fuel rail look like this. That's what came out. They don't work. They're a machine screw. The new one is a plastic hole, and you need to use these screws. Same with the coils. Coils, you now have to use these screws and not the originals, because all the holes are plastic. So just be aware you have to change all the bolts except for the ones holding on the throttle body. Alright, I put some Vaseline on this. Hopefully it'll slide in better now. I might have to actually get the... Yeah, it just won't slide in. Let's do that. Might have to actually get the expander. Sometimes on these you need the expander to put it on too, which usually you don't. Surprisingly, you need that. Get the red one out. I'm going to put this expander tool on here. Dang it, why won't that pop on? That is bizarre. This one's on, right? Yeah, it's on. Should just slide right back in. There you go. Boy, that bugger just did not want to come on. Sometimes you gotta force it. And then make sure to put your little clips here for helping hold it together. Honestly, probably don't do anything, but whatever. At least keeps it from banging around. There. Alright, next thing. I thought I was recording and I sort of missed some of that. So I just put on this. When you use for this old of a Crown Vic, you need to actually put in a spacer, and then there's two other screw spacers you have to put in to use the same thermostat cap. So brand new thermostat, new O-ring, but you need to use the spacers that they give you. So they give you two little spacers and then a big spacer for the whole thing. That's for Crown Vics this old. The newer ones you probably don't need to do that. I also put on this bracket for the alternator. I hooked up a lot of the wiring, which you didn't see because I thought I was recording. The only thing left wiring wise is put in the actual positive for the alternator, and then put in this thing here. You have to pull out. Hold on. You've got to pull out this and this to fill in the holes there and there. The one on this side is actually a temperature sensor, so you need that for your temperature. So I plugged in all these hoses. I'm gonna have to tape this. This is broken. Eventually get some rubber hose for that. That rubber hose broken. That rubber hose is broken. I need two rubber hose issues. I'm missing a connector here, which apparently is right here. What else? And then missing a connector here. That's probably it here. So you just got to make sure everything's plugged back in when you get done. I've not filled it with fluid yet. Need to tighten up. So I ended up with the old one and then a new one that's extra. You got to pick the right one for your car because they have different holes, different mounting points. I need extension. Again, you want to tighten it up by hand. Only use power tools to zip them in if you do that. Don't want it to leak though. Don't want to crack it, don't want to leak. I want everything to work good. Alright. So now I'm going to hook on this hose here. Make sure everything's plugged in underneath it. Make sure your two cables are somewhat controlled back here. They're sort of messed up. Dang it. Two cables are not working right now. There. Just put it this way. Ow. There we go. That'll hold that. Alright, now we're going to need to plug in these two hoses into the plastic before we put it onto the thing. Actually, that's not true. Put this on first. Make sure that you get all of your hoses plugged in. And then turn this around and plug it in there. That's a lot harder usually in the winter. The thing turns very hard. Alright, almost time to put in my press down. One last thing I noticed, I forgot, again, check over all your wires. Almost forgot to plug in my oxygen sensor, or I'm sorry, my airflow sensor. Make sure that's plugged in, and that's plugged in. This one has two. The newer ones only have one. This one has two. It should be all of them. Now we're going to fill it with fluid. Now what I've got here is the concentrate, which is all they used to sell. And so that means I need a gallon of this and a gallon of water. I've already actually drained the fluid. This is always a good time to exchange fluid, not just pour in using the old fluid. Okay. Let's see if I can do this without spilling too much. Okay, I'm gonna go get some more water. Probably keep one of these in the car for water. Dirty air. Alright, I'm filling it this time with water. I'm sure there's a lot of air bubbles, so I have to wait till it runs the engine a little bit before we fully finish. But next step is checking for leaks, see if there's any leaks coming out, mainly right around here. Test it out.